Hello, this is Professor BRB, and today we're going to take a look at a subject very dear to my heart, typography in Adobe Illustrator. This will be the first of several videos. Today we are going to deal with display typography. So the first thing that we want to do is go make sure that we're in the typography workspace in Adobe Illustrator. And let me just go Command-0 and bring this into focus here. I'm going to delete this. Type works a little bit different in Illustrator than it does in other Adobe applications. So the first thing that we need to understand is the difference between area type and point type. To create point type, you simply select your type tool and click anywhere on your artboard and you can type. And there you are, you have type. To create area type, you choose your type tool and you click and drag out a frame. Now this looks like, ooh, except for I can't spell. Correct that there. Let's see that there is a difference. Although these look the same superficially, if I take this frame that I've created and drag it down, you'll notice that it breaks my line on the area type. I go to my point type and I try to do the same thing, you'll see that my type becomes sort of horribly distorted, which looks pretty bad, and it'll do the same thing this way. So I always recommend creating area type because it's just not that much more trouble to click and drag out a frame. And it gives you a lot more options later on. So you will notice that this particular typeface I was typing with, called copperplate, which is one of the standard typefaces most people have, is in what we call caps and small caps, which means it has large capitals and small capitals. That makes this a display font. And to show the difference between a display font and a text font, I'm going to change this to Caslon here. Let's go to Adobe Caslon Pro here, and I'm going to go to Bold. Well, I'll go to Regular. This is a text type font. To explain the difference between text and display is fairly simple. A text font is one like Adobe Caslon here that you can imagine if it was in a smaller size, it would be fine to read an entire book or a long piece of text set in this. And that makes it a text font. However, any text font can function as a display font if it is set in a large size. And if we look over here in our character palette, we can see that we have various kinds of information here. We are given our typeface, which is Adobe Caslon Pro, and if we click on that, we have many, many typefaces to choose from. However many are installed on your computer. And within Adobe Caslon Pro, we have several type fonts or type styles. We have semi-bold, we have regular, we have italic. Let me select this and I can show you a few of those. We are in Caslon Pro Regular, which would be what you would use for text. But there is always also an italic and a semi-bold and a semi-bold italic. And those are all very useful. But if we were setting large amounts of text type, we would probably use regular. Down here we can see the point size. 60 point is very large, and if we look at this menu, we can see that we have all kinds of sizes, and a standard size for text would be 12 point, which is quite small, but is very readable in any kind of publication. Anything above 14 point is considered to be a display size or for short pieces of attention-getting text. So in typography, the word display actually has two meanings. One meaning is any type set larger than 14 point, and the next meaning is a attention-getting typeface such as copperplate, which we looked at earlier, which, as you'll notice, has no lowercase, so that would really not be suitable for a text setting. And many, many other typefaces that are obviously only meant for short settings. For example, you can look here at Impact, and you can see that's a very condensed, very bold typeface, and we wouldn't want to read a whole long block of text in that. Now, Illustrator has all kinds of special effects that you can apply to type. For example, if you go to your Object menu here and choose Envelope Distort, Make with Warp, and choose Preview, you can see that there are all kinds of options here for how you could conceivably distort your type. And all of these have various editable features here that you can kind of control them. And sometimes this can be very good attention-getting, although my personal taste is kind of to classic typography. So I don't use these features that much, but it's nice to have them. Okay, I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to show you another interesting thing that you can do with type in Adobe Illustrator. You can use it to create a clipping mask. And to explain what that means, I'm going to Option drag this photograph out here and make a copy of it. I'm going to grab the corner and hold down my Shift key and kind of scale it up. And I can see here that my type in my layering palette here is over the picture, which is just how I want it. And I can move the type anywhere I want it to be on this picture. And if I select both the type of the picture and nothing else, I can go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And you can see that now my type has become a mask, which is allowing the picture to show through it. This is pretty interesting, pretty fun. The picture is still there, and I can move my type around. And if I click off and select with my direct selection tool, you can see that as I mouse over, that red box that appears shows my picture. And I can reposition the picture. And sometimes this will look good, sometimes it won't look good, but you can get some interesting effects this way. It's always good to use a very bold typeface when you're going to use this kind of effect, because I think that you can see if we go to a lighter typeface, that it really doesn't show up as well because you can't see that much of the picture. Now, if I decide I don't like this clipping mask, I can always release it. I just go to Object, Clipping Mask, Release, and my two items become separate again. So I'm just going to get rid of that and grab my type here and pull it back down. And I'm going to also just show you another little feature in Illustrator. Under Type, you can go Change Case, and if I have something typed in upper and lower case and I want it to be in uppercase, I can just change it. So that's kind of cool. Now, another really great feature in Illustrator, which is kind of unique to Illustrator, is the ability to create outlines in type. In order to show you how that works, I'm going to make two copies of this type here. And I'm going to go to Outline View. And with my selection tool, I'm going to select one of those two copies and go to Type, Create Outlines. Wow, that made a big difference. Now notice that if I go to my Type tool here, I can still edit this bottom type that I did not create outlines on, but this top type is no longer editable. And what this allows me to do is a few different interesting things. For example, if I choose my direct selection tool, I can choose individual points on this type. At this point, it's just like any other Adobe Illustrator drawing. And I can customize my type, which is kind of cool. Sometimes you might want to do that. I can also, if I go to my selection tool, I can ungroup this. And what that means is my individual letters can now be dealt with as individual entities. So I can scale them. Make sure you hold down your Shift key if you do this so they don't get distorted. And I can move them around if I want to and create kind of a custom headline. I don't like the way this looks, but and you can do all kinds of things to your letters if you have a reason to do so. They can be, for example, take this T out here. They can be rotated and moved around and scaled, and you can come up with some pretty unique looking headlines this way. It's very useful for logo design to be able to do this. I'm going to go ahead and make this white and then move it on top of here. One thing I'd like to point out with display typography is that it's very important to have strong contrast between your type and the background. Please do not make the mistake of trying to put type over a complex photograph like this right here. I think you can easily see the reason for that. That if we put type over a complicated photograph, the type and the photograph almost just kind of cancel each other out. So always try to keep your type on a very plain sort of high contrast background and you're going to have much better effect. Sometimes you can put type over photographs if you can find an area of the photograph that has plain areas of color, or solid areas of color, I guess is a better way to put that. And that can look just fine. So always be aware that if you find yourself thinking about your type in such a way that you're going, oh, it's really not showing up, maybe I should be adding an outline or doing a bunch of other crazy stuff to it, it's usually better to just work with contrast. I'll kind of show you what I mean. For example, what if I had a very low contrast color here and it wasn't showing up? Rather than adding an outline or adding a lot of special effects, it would really be better to just make it a lighter color and add the contrast and have the type stand out in that way. If you go to Show Options in your character panel, you get a few more useful options. And one here is called Tracking, which adjusts the spacing between a range of letters. And if we go to a negative number, it makes our spacing closer. And if we go to a positive number, it makes our spacing wider. And particularly if you're doing a headline in all capitals, it often looks very good to track it out a little bit wider. There's another similar option right here called kerning, which allows us to adjust the spacing between a pair of letters. And if you put your cursor between a pair of letters, you can also draw those letters closer or send them further apart. And this is useful when you're doing logo types or you're doing very detailed custom spacing of a headline.